Jesus was once asked by the religious leaders of his day, "What is the greatest commandment?" And this is what he replied with. He said, and this is in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 and 38, he said, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." And so if Jesus said this is our first and the greatest commandment, then guess what? This is our purpose. This is what we are to do with our lives. So what does it look like? What does it really look like to love the Lord with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, and all of our strength? And I want to look at this picture of love that Jesus is telling us in the book of Luke. This is chapter 7. I'm going to just read it to you. It says this. It says, "One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of oil. Standing behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet and anointed them with the oil. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, 'If this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner.' And Jesus answering said to him, 'Simon, I have something to say to you.' And he answered, 'Say it, teacher.' A certain money lender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and another 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which of them will love him more?' Simon answered, 'The one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt.' And he said to him, 'You've judged rightly.' Then turning towards the woman, he said to Simon, 'Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss. But from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with oil. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little.' And he said to her, 'Your sins are forgiven.' Then those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, 'Who is this who even forgives sins?' And he said to the woman, 'Your faith has saved you. Go in peace.'" So by the end of this story, we start to see a stark contrast between Simon and this woman and the way they love Jesus. There is a big difference. So to really get a good understanding of what is happening here, we need to look at some of the cultural norms that were in place at this time in Israel in the biblical day. So at this time in ancient Middle Eastern culture, there was a high value placed on being hospitable and taking people into their home. And one of the things that people would do, and it was expected, it was well known, they all did it when someone was invited into their home, is they would give them water for them to wash their feet. At this time, the people wore sandals, right? And they were walking around, travelers were walking in this dusty, arid region. And this was just something that was courtesy, and it showed respect and honor and hospitality. You always would give the person that came into your home a way to wash their feet. Also, greeting someone with a kiss in this culture was very normal. It not only showed hospitality, it not only showed a friendliness and a welcoming, but it also showed how much esteem and worth that you were giving the person that was walking into your home. And so when it was revealed at the end of the story that Simon didn't do any of these things, he didn't give him water for his feet, he didn't give him oil for his head or for his feet, and he did not kiss him when he entered his home, which was very normal. It was well known that is what you do to show respect and honor to the visitor in your home. So it kind of seems like Simon may have had another motive for inviting Jesus to his home. And we'll get to that in a second. But I want to talk also about some of the cultural norms that were surrounding this woman. Why was she even there? Why was this woman in the house of Simon. Simon doesn't strike me as a person that was going to invite a well-known sinner of the town and the community he lived to his home, where they were having dinner for all these uppity religious leaders. That didn't seem like that fit. So why was she in attendance? I don't think that she was an invited guest to this dinner. So why was she there? Another thing was that women were not even allowed in a lot of the religious rituals of this time. They were not allowed in. They were segregated. They kept men and women separate, and they were not allowed to be in any of the discussions of the religious leaders. So this is really weird that she's in this room. Another cultural thing was it was very inappropriate and not okay for a woman to ever touch a man in public, especially a religious leader. And so this was really strange that she came in. She was touching Jesus. She was weeping at his feet, and she was touching and washing his feet and drying them with her hair, which is another thing that women in this day were supposed to cover their hair. They were supposed to wear a covering on their head to hide their hair. And she let her hair down as she was weeping and drying his feet with her tears. So we see this contrast where what's happening here is Simon is inviting Jesus into his home, but I believe he was purposely disrespecting him in front of the religious leaders. I believe he was purposely giving him dishonor and saying, you are not worth what people are saying you are worth. You come into this room and I'm going to disrespect you and dishonor you. And this woman why was she there again? Was she in the room? What I think had happened was, it says earlier in the story that she had heard that Jesus was there. She had heard that Jesus was reclining at the table in Simon's house. And so when she heard this news, she came to the house probably to get a peek at Jesus, to maybe get an encounter with him. I believe, many scholars believe, that this woman came there to see Jesus, but she had already had an encounter with him. Many people believe that this is the same woman that Jesus had driven 7 demons out of. And she's standing there, probably with a crowd of people. I'm sure that she wasn't the only one. There was probably more people that heard this and came. I mean, Jesus had a pretty large following at this time. People were following him around everywhere. And so there was probably a crowd of people standing around and possibly in or around this home. And they're seeing how Simon is treating Jesus. They're seeing the disrespect and dishonor that he is publicly showing to him. And I think this woman, out of her love for him, out of knowing who he was and what he had done for her, she broke through the house. I think she just came out. She stepped away from these cultural norms of her day. She stepped out of this crowd of people. She came into that home and she gave Jesus the honor and the respect that Simon refused to give him. And that's such a powerful thing. It's such a beautiful picture of love. It's such a beautiful picture of how we are to love with all of our heart, all of our mind, and all of our strength, not caring about the culture, not caring about what other people think. This is how we love. That in this day, in our culture today, people are using Jesus' name as a cuss word. They are dishonoring and disrespect him. He's a joke to so many people. And what disrespect given to him. And in my life and in your life, we need to come together and say, you know what? I am going to step out of my culture. I am going to give Jesus honor and respect. Even if I'm the only one that's going to do it, I am going to do it. I am going to love the Lord my God with all of my heart, my soul, my mind, and my strength, and give him just a little piece of what he deserves. It's just a small part, what I can do for God who deserves so much. So my love for him is big because I see who he is. We see who he is, and we begin to love God with all of our lives and let our lives be one big thank you to him.